you guys so much for taking the time to do this with me. We just had a great conversation. We had Dr. Josh Luke talking about health is the new wealth, telling us, get to know your DNA, get to know your personal health, and really learn to manage your own kind of self-care. And then we had a technology conversation, which was robust, with OneDrop on the line talking about their technology platform. But then all those other employers and brokers were just really bringing to the table this theme of really helping their employees understand their self-care. And so now I am so excited to go ahead and get started with our next topic, which is chronic disease and the latest skinny on the diet and nutrition landscape. So what we're talking about today, just so everyone knows, and we kind of had a summary on it, but is essentially kind of what are the trends, and then how, and it's similar to the conversation we had previously with chronic disease management. How are you, helping your employees understand diet and nutrition, and what do you do with, Dr. Google and diets that are everywhere, thrown at you everywhere, and how do you manage it? And so I am going to introduce everybody now that I've got you all on. So we have Sally Luck from Hallmark, and Sally is joining us today to help bring kind of light to what Hallmark is doing in the space, as well as, and she's HR Director of Corporate Services and Wellness for Hallmark. We have Susan Tufts, Health and Wellness Manager at WellBeing. Hi, Susan. We also have Robin Bouvier, and we can see you, Vice President of Health and Benefits Practice at Aon, one of the large brokerage firms and consulting firms that manages mid to large employers. And then we have Dr. J.J. Mayo, who is an Associate Professor of Nutrition at University of Central Arkansas. And I will say he was my coach. I signed up for a 4-week class with Dr. J.J., and it was awesome. I actually learned so much from it, but just learning how to kind of implement a special diet, and it really was nice to have the human touch, as we were all talking about, but it was through technology that we did it. So you guys, thanks so much for joining. I just want to remind the audience that we do have a little area for you guys to participate with us. Those of you that have been with us, you'll know we have audience polling, so we're going to ask a few polling questions, and we do want to hear from our audience. We also have open Q&A, and again, I'm going to try my best to get to the questions at the end. If I can't, I will get the questions to our speakers and try to get you the answers that you're looking for as soon as I can. Please, if you have a question, populate that in the Q&A segment of the area and not in the chat module, because the Q&A is where I can populate all the questions and actually keep track of them. And then, of course, we're recording this webinar today, so for those of you that want to be able to kind of go back to it and listen to some of the great points that are made by our speakers, you'll be able to do that. We'll send you the replay shortly. And before we start asking any questions, what I want to do is just get started with the polling question, and then we will jump right in. So audience participation, please. Before we welcome today's speakers, we'd like to understand what most drew you to attend this portion of the webinar. Are you looking to reduce high cost claims? Looking to learn more about ways to improve health of your employees and your employer clients? Or looking for best practices for better nutrition practices for employers, for employees and employer clients? Let's go ahead and pull the polling question up now, and we'll give you a couple minutes to answer. Just helps us to understand, get the pulse of what you all are looking to hear from us. And great. I'll give you a couple more seconds to answer. Thanks everyone for participating. All right. Awesome. So I'm going to give you guys the results. Here they are. So, well, not surprisingly, the overwhelming majority is looking to improve the health of their employees or their employer clients. So very cool. Well, that's what we're trying to do today. And so before I take up any more time talking myself, I would love to start with JJ, if I could. And the first question we have for you today is, what do you recommend to wellness professionals sifting through all the latest diet craze from a nutritionist perspective?
Well, that's definitely a great question, Jenny. And so everyone knows one of the reasons I'm here too. My wife, I'm in the wellness space. My wife is a director at Nebholz Construction and pretty well known in the wellness space. So I appreciate that. And this is a really tough. It can be challenging out there for a couple of different reasons. One is there's so much conflicting advice. You know, you see all the different diets everywhere from the vegan diet all the way to the carnivore diet. I don't know if anyone's heard of that before, and everything in between. And then you've got social media and print media, and it just really becomes a challenge for employees to figure out what is the real truth out there. And then also we have these recommendations that don't seem to be working right now. Things like, you've heard this for years and years. It's as simple as eat less and exercise more. But that doesn't really seem to be working, because as a society, we just seem to be getting bigger and bigger, and obesity we know is a big challenge. And one of the latest studies, I don't know if you guys have seen this, if you look at the extreme example of this, eat less and exercise more, is the Biggest Loser study. Have you guys seen that study? A couple of years ago, they took contestants from the Biggest Loser and they tracked them. And almost all of the people that had lost tons of weight, they gained it back within a couple of year period. So it really is challenging for people to know what's going to work. And then even some of the guidelines now can become a challenge when you look at what people are doing. And we're promoting, doing more whole grains and some of these things that we think are correct, but the guidelines as we follow them aren't as getting us the results that we're looking for, because as a society, we just continue to get overweight, and obesity just continues to be a real challenge for us. But the good news is, everybody, that food is, and I'm a registered dietitian, so I know that food is medicine, and the healthcare dollars that everybody is paying out really can be attributed to fixing someone's diet. And I believe food is medicine, and things like obesity and diabetes and hypertension and even cholesterol can be controlled through diet. And some of the biggest things, so if we were to throw out all the different diet plans and just look at some of the general suggestions that I would have as people are sifting through all of this, is stick with the basics. Most of you know that any diet that you choose, one of the biggest things that you want to do is you're going to eliminate the refined carbohydrates and sugars. And right now in society, Americans are eating 250 to 300 grams of sugar or carbohydrate every day. And so 300 grams of carbohydrate, especially if you're not being active, is going to lead us down a road to diabetes and obesity. And, one of the things that we also realize about sugar is it can be addicting. So if I had to give you the biggest suggestion is to eliminate the refined carbohydrates and sugars no matter what diet you're doing, and then eat on your plate quality protein source at every meal. Make sure that you're doing that, and it can include a little extra fat if you would like. And then cut back on some of the refined vegetable oils that we see now that are so prominent, and things like soybean oil and some of these other types of oils, and really stick to the healthy fats, things like avocados and avocado oil. And I know sometimes that's hard when you talk about having that in a work cafeteria, but those are the things that are really going to make the difference. Things like coconut oil would be another good option. Eating 3 meals a day would be another recommendation, no matter what diet plan that you're on. And then ultimately, it's about eating real food. No matter what diet plan you choose, it's about eating real food, and that's really going to make the difference. And what is real food, somebody might ask? Nowadays, sometimes we have trouble kind of figuring that out, but it's a food, if you lay out on the counter and you go a little bit of time, it's going to rot. And so that's important, along with things like decreasing stress. And your group from the last session did an excellent job talking about that. Decreasing stress and improving sleep and getting some exercise is important, but food can really fix a lot of our ails.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Anybody else would like to chime in on the kind of food conversation with your employee cafeterias before we move forward?
I'll add one point, that people really should eat when they're hungry, and they should eat for energy. And so often at work, at home, at every function, everywhere we go, food is a celebration. Food is expected. It's given as a treat or as a reward. You take a tray of pastries out of the executive boardroom and say, hey, everybody who already had breakfast, there's free food in the break room and they all come running. Nobody's hungry. So part of it is recognizing that if we ate until we were satisfied and we ate all of the healthy whole foods that you just described, we would sustain energy more, and then perhaps we would be less motivated by these external triggers. And then as organizations, if we can start to remove some of those temptations, I think that would help as well.
Awesome, thank you.
I totally agree.
Oh, go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, no, I totally agree that we need to remove the temptations. I think it's our jobs as employers to provide really great, healthy foods, lots of choices, lots of variety, and incent employees to eat the right foods. What we do is discount our healthiest foods. So there's always an entree and other items that can go along to make a meal that are discounted in our employee dining. And we also really focus on fresh foods. So almost all of our menu development and our recipes are developed around really great, healthy, fresh foods. So putting those good choices in front of people can keep them from making bad choices. And sure, everybody's going to make a bad choice every now and then, but if you concentrate on eating the good food first, you're less likely to make those bad choices.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'll just add, I think what Dr. Mayo shared is absolutely correct as far as what we are proposing right now is not working. But I don't think it's because it's not the right thing to do. I think it's because people don't want to hear it. You know, they want to do what's easy, what's convenient. And there is so much more less healthy food available now. It's more convenient. It's just in your face all the time. And with everything else they're faced with, whether it's the political situation in the country or your own family frustrations or whatever dysfunction is going on, I think, food is a source of contentment for people or a source of satisfaction. And, they may not be able to do a lot of things the way they want to do them, but they can have their Twinkie that will not die in 17 years of sitting on the counter. And that is not one of my food choices. I will say that. But, I do think there's so much in the world we live in that pushes people to the less healthy choices. And people go towards the fad diets because they think, oh, this might work. They want something new. They want something easy. They want something okay, this is it. They take the pill if they could, but that pill's not available yet. And I think it's just a sign of frustration of people, not necessarily, they know they should drink more water. They know they should eat less fat and eat less sugar. But getting people to do it is the challenge.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Susan. I think too that obesity and weight problems are so complex. They're so tied up so many times in emotional issues. And to your point, Susan, what's going on with your family or in the world. I mean, sometimes food is comfort. And back to Robin's point is, we need to get people to think of it as fuel, as having an impact on their health and having an impact on how they feel for the day. Being able to have the energy to get through the day and not be, so tired at 4 o'clock that you have to go hit the vending machine. Being able to really understand the impact that food has on your productivity and your energy level and the way you feel.
I agree. Perfect.
I agree. Yeah, great point. And I think that kind of leads us to that next kind of question. It's behavior, right? And so, Robin, you were kind of touching on this, but how much does kind of these behavior, habits play in an employee engagement when you're running these for your employer clients?
I'd say engagement is really the only thing that matters, right? If we can't get people to do things, nothing is going to change. And we know the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? So by definition, when we are driving behavior change, it's so we can get different results. But the two biggest excuses people make for not engaging in healthy lifestyles, Susan mentioned at least one of them, which is time, right? Life moves very quickly, and we're all expected to do so much more in each generation. So we don't perceive that we have a lot of free time. But then the second biggest excuse is money. And if we were all to think about how much money we spend on things that we don't need, right? Whether it's buying lunch instead of bringing it, whether it's going out for coffee instead of making it in the office. You know, there are lots of ways that we could think about spending money differently, but because we're humans and feelings drive results, we heard that in the earlier panel, right? We do what feels good. We eat what feels good. We go shopping because it creates retail therapy. It's comfort, right? So if we could really help people to appreciate what feeling good actually feels like, it would be a lot easier to motivate them. And too many employers struggle trying to find the right balance between programs and incentives and rewards to get people to do stuff. But ultimately, incentives may bounce backwards by driving down the sense of power and control that people have. So perhaps they are less likely now to engage in the same activity in the future, even if it felt good doing it the first time, simply because it wasn't their idea and they were doing it because of an extrinsic motivator. So those are a couple of thoughts that I would have around behavior change. I don't know if any of the other panelists would add anything.
I have very, very strong feelings about not just behavior change, but the whole emotional well-being part of things. And when we look at the programs, I guess one of the advantages of being older in this field is I've been here a long time, and I've learned so much along the way, and I've seen different things. I think, you know, when you're young, you think you're going to live forever, and you can't imagine your bones aching when you're trying to do, you know, a simple run or whatever. And as you get older and things do change, it creates different needs. So I look at our organization at WellBeing. Our average age is 50. We have about 5,000 employees, and they work in all different areas. And if you look in our call centers, the average obesity rate is over 50%. Our company obesity rate is under 35, so it's better than the national average. But in the call centers, where you have a group of people that are sedentary most of the time, they have a very different rate. And then you look at what their other health risks are, and they all connect. And so that's a big concern. But you look nationally, and I'm going to ramble a bit here, but I'll try and wrap up the point at the end. You know, I just read this weekend about a 23-year-old woman who was on the national cycling team, and on the Olympic cycling team, and she committed suicide. And you think, here's this healthy young person. And, you know, if we were focusing on her through most of our programs, we'd be focusing on, oh gosh, she's doing everything right. But it isn't any one thing. You know, we have our physical health, we have our mental health, we have our financial health and our social well-being. All those things integrate. And, you know, I think my focus is, I'm not looking for anybody to check off the boxes that, okay, they're perfect with their A1C, or they're perfect with their weight, or any one thing. It's kind of like trying to be okay with all those things. And I think awareness is important. Communication is important, and those are the things we try and do at WellBeing in our programs. We try and make sure people are aware of their risks through a health screening, and we don't push being perfect in any of those risks. We let them know what the high risk values are, and we're encouraging them to be under those values. And then we want them to be aware of our EAP programs and our resources and our financial resources. And, you know, if you try and be great at all those things, it's overwhelming. But if we try and let people know that they are okay, and I'm not going to talk anymore, so it's all up to the rest of you guys now. But, you know, we try and work with where they're at and identify. So if it's a nutrition issue, you know, whether they're trying a certain diet or not, we don't try and tell them that's a terrible thing to do. We try and find out what they're looking to accomplish and try and help steer them towards what might be a healthier option. But those are kind of the things. It's all of those pieces that we look at when we're pulling together any one program.
No, I think that's great, Susan. And to piggyback off you a little bit, I think it's when you look at making these small changes over time, and that's what you try to do with your employees. You don't want them to be perfect. You're not
Right.
looking for perfection. You're just hoping that they're going to make progress over time, and making these smaller steps are going to lead to hopefully big results, and which ultimately will lead to lower healthcare dollars that you guys spend. And when I've worked with individuals, I always like to focus on behavioral goals and not those outcome goals. Like if you have someone with an A1C and you're like, okay, this is where you're at. It's not in the norm. You're at high risk. This is where we want you to be, but you're setting small steps and you're doing it with behaviors. Okay, so maybe let's go ahead and lower your carbohydrate level, or maybe let's make some tweaks to your diet to see what's going to happen. You don't want to try to do everything at once, because that's just going to lead to overwhelm, and that's what so many people face now, is overwhelm with their diet and with everything else that's going on in their lives, instead of just taking it one small step at a time and being positive with that, and then leading to the big results.
We're actually doing something that's a little bit different for us this year. We're implementing a new wellness provider that is also our EAP provider. And part of the appeal there was the coaching option that's offered. And so we do biometric screenings on site, and we have about half of our population that participates in those. And then based on their outcomes, they are incented for healthy outcomes on BMI and blood pressure. Or if they don't achieve the CDC guideline for the healthy range, then there is an alternative that they can do to get the incentive points. And so this year, because of this new relationship, we're offering coaching. So it's telephonic coaching through the EAP, and it's on any number of topics that they offer. And I kind of had a hard time getting my head around this, to be very honest. I wanted it to be very targeted to weight loss and cardiovascular health. I was talked out of that position, and I think it is probably the better way to go, to give them the range of whatever topic they want to engage, because they may not be ready to tackle their weight, but they may be ready to tackle their sleep or their back problems or their stress problems. And so meeting them where they are and what they're ready to work on was explained to me as a better way to go than really just trying to focus on what those particular problem areas are. So it kind of gets back to the whole emotional well-being, and you have to, make sure that you're really dealing with the right problems that then can affect those outcomes down the road.
Hey, Sally, I love that you brought that up, because when we think about what gets in the way of people achieving and maintaining a healthy weight, it's usually not diet and exercise, right? It's stress, it's finances, I have relationship issues, I'm struggling with something else in my life. So I love the idea of allowing an individual to have a personal conversation, really make it a personal experience about what's getting in the way of them feeling the way they want to feel. Because ultimately, how they want to feel should be the reason why they do anything, right? So I love the coaching, but I also recognize that we need to overcome some issues around behavioral economics, like what Susan brought up, where when you're in a call center and everyone is sedentary, people like to be like other people. They like to fit in. So if we can start to think about changing the social and cultural norms in organizations, so you don't feel like you stand out when you're doing the healthy thing. Those are some of the things that perhaps a coach might encourage someone to do. Grab other people in your office and take a walk together, or make it a standing meeting. So I just love those ideas.
Yeah. The coaching aspect, I think, is really important, because as you guys know, in wellness, a lot of times companies are really good about collecting the data, but then they don't do anything with it. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's why Jamie's program does so well, is because she has a personal relationship with every single one of her employees. And if they want to talk to her, they just pick up a phone and make the call. I know, because sometimes they're calling at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m, but she always answers the call. And with even if it's a phone consultation like you guys are doing, Sally, I think that's a great start. And you open the door for them then later down the road to really build a relationship with that person, and then they'll open up and get into things that will eventually affect their weight and their health.
Right. Yeah, I think the tie too with our EAP, because they can have unlimited coaching sessions. They only will be rewarded for 2 sessions, but they can, if they are, really making progress with the coach, it can go on and on. So, or they can come back for a different topic later on. So, hopefully this is going to work out well for us. I'll let you guys know like next year how it's working.
That is all fabulous. What I think I like most about everything that everyone has said is that it all really ties to the whole person. So you're not just looking at what are they eating and are they exercising, but you're really evaluating and providing programs for the whole person. And Susan, thank you for bringing up, the story of the healthy Olympian that looks like everything is going great, and then you see, in this scary, high suicide rates are going up, and I think it all definitely, it's all intermixing. It's all, kind of interwoven into how things work, and so to take a look at mental and behavioral health as it relates to diet is something that's imperative. And in June, we're going to be doing a webinar on mental and behavioral health, and we're going to talk about things like you're discussing. But I think that these play such a huge role, in these kinds of things. And I wanted to ask, Susan and all of you guys. We'll start with Susan, and then everyone else can chime in. What new innovative trends have you explored for your future programs, and if any, or have you heard of for your future programs that you'd like to explore?
I love that question because I can't say that in our wellness program we have been leading edge. I think one of the things that's good about our program is we're comprehensive and we've stood the test of time. But we are not the first one to always go out there and try something new. That being said, we are the kings and queens of pilot programming, and so we will go after something and say, okay, let's try it. We'll try anything in a small way. And so what we've done specifically with weight management, that's a tough one because people want programs to lose weight. They want a program. And probably the one that we have that is the most popular is Weight Watchers. And the reason for that is because they tell you how much you can eat, and they give you little prizes, and there's a lot to their program. I actually did it once, and I remember, it's a point system. And by 2 o'clock, I was out of my points, and I'm like, what do I do? Oh my gosh. But it gives you a sense of how much is okay. So that was great, but right now there are some things that aren't really working with that program for us. So we've explored different options. We've developed our own programs that include a nutrition component, a mental health component, and an exercise component. That worked well, but it was very labor intensive. Then we've done a diabetes prevention program, which includes similar things, less costly. We got the same results, about a 6% weight loss for participants. So that was, we're seeing some good things there. One of the things this group we talked about beforehand was apps. What apps are out there? I would love to know, and if anybody watching, now I'm going to get a lot of calls, but if anybody has a really good, simple app that can help people with that aspect, because everybody has a different need. You have 100 people who want to lose weight. Some are going to want to do one thing. Others are going to want something else. But if there was a simple tool we could use that could help in the form of tracking, I would love to know about that. So I guess I didn't answer your question, except we're not doing anything extremely innovative. So how about the rest of you?
Well, one thing that we're doing, and it's not forward thinking, we've been doing it for a couple of years, but it sort of answers the question of having healthy foods handy and easily accessible, is we have these micro Marts that are replacing vending machines, and they're available 24/7. Everybody's nodding, so you all know, so it's not really all that innovative, but it's been really successful for us. I think just enables us to bring healthy food to people 24/7. And we have plants and distribution centers that's 3 shifts. So we have people working, all through the night. We do serve food to them, meals, but this is also for their breaks, or even just people here at headquarters who, it's handier for them, or they're working late or whatever. They can grab some nice, fresh, healthy food rather than just a pastry or a candy bar, or, bag of potato chips. So I think those have been really well received and really well supported, and I think we sort of see that as the future of replacing vending. I don't know if ever entirely, but to a larger degree in our locations.
Yeah, I'll mention, as we think about business results that really matter, in the earlier poll question, people are really looking to improve the health of employees. So maybe they're less focused on the cost of healthcare, really more focused on productivity and performance. So if we could really think about what does it take to drive higher levels of engagement? It's at the intersection of well-being and engagement that employee productivity is optimized. Some recent data that came out suggested that having about 7 or 8 different types of wellness programs or resources was the right number. But the 2 that were valued most by employees, number 1 was a program to help me manage a condition or a disease, which sounds kind of strange because participation in those programs is so low. And yet what it tells us is that employees value the programs whether they use them or not. But the number 2 most valued wellness program was having a work environment that helps me make healthy choices. So I think as we think about really changing the work environment, offering healthy food options, eliminating some of the less healthy ones, helping physical activity and movement and stress management to be the norm. One of the more recent trends I just heard about in an office was a flavored water machine, just a seltzer machine. So it replicates the fizziness of soda without all the chemicals and the sweeteners and all of the calories, and people were gangbusters over it. So if you think about just what can you do to make the work environment more fun, a nicer area for socializing and for people to make connections with others, and a great place for them to get healthy snacks and beverages. I think that those are some of the better trends per se than even some of the programs out there.
Yeah, and I asked Jamie before I came on, because I don't work at a company, and I asked her, what are the trends have you been seeing in your company? And it's not like we had talked about earlier, it's not really related to food so much. The biggest one that she mentioned was mental health, and the fact that people, when they're struggling, and they've just had, she gave me an example of one of her employees who had 2 miscarriages, and another one that maybe had really high hemoglobin A1C and had diabetes really bad. They're not really, if they have all this stress going on in their lives, they're not worried about their health. That's the last thing on the list, right? You got the immediate stuff and someone, I think she mentioned that someone had depression, right? And dealing with that has got to be the most imminent threat to that individual. And they're not so much worried about their health.
Right.
So it's not really a new trend, but that's what she mentioned.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stigma.
Yeah. And JJ, to that point as well, one of the things that we're identifying is families who are dealing with children with disabilities and employees with disabilities in the workplace as well. We have a new employee resource group in the past year that is dealing with that issue. And one of the things that we did was employ a company that provides resources for these families, anywhere from individual sessions with the family, the children, a whole team approach to learning and discipline and behavioral issues, a vast library of resources, and we're making that available to all employees. And the reason is because families who have a disabled child, they're spending more money on health care, they're more distracted from the workplace, they're more stressed, they just need some assistance. And we haven't had a huge uptake in, people taking advantage of the services, but the people who have are so appreciative. And we've had people who've said, oh my gosh, I wish I had had that when my child was young, because it is a real problem for employees to have to deal with that whole level of stress and then have to come to work and be productive. So that's just an area that we're trying to really support our employees in a much larger way than we have in the past.
It's a really
awesome.
Great point, Sally. There are so many solutions to address the caregiving crisis because it's a major driver of stress after finances, but caregiving drives financial burdens on families. And so how could we expect people to be putting their personal health first and eating and exercising and worried about their weight when they've got these bigger fish to fry? So it really does have to be addressed holistically to help people, to better manage their total well-being.
I think every single one of you have brought such great points to the table that it's really not about one trick or diet, but it's really about looking again at the whole person. I personally did a DNA unboxing where I was able to look at sort of my nutrition as it relates to my genetics. And the discovery I found is that kind of everything that we've talked about in today is what I should be doing, right? Especially you, Dr. Mayo, you just said it earlier. Cut down the sugar, cut down the complex carbs, eat healthy protein, healthy fat, and foods that don't rot, foods that do rot, so that you're not eating so much, processed boxed foods. Oh, I was going to say too, Sally, for you, I think that's super innovative what you are doing with your vending. And if you're providing that at either subsidized cost or if you're providing it, just as available or to your employees, it's actually with the new tax laws, tax deductible, to provide snacks to your employees versus like meals where you're subsidizing that cost. Providing snacks, healthy snacks, is a tax deductible thing to do now with the new tax laws. So kudos to you. That's pretty cool.
Thanks.
I like it.
I didn't know that.
Yes, it's probably the benefit side of things. They're looking at that from a cost saving perspective. But if you can provide healthy snacks and it's tax deductible, it's a benefit. It's a win-win for the bottom line and for the employees. And there was another question that we had too for you, Sally. How has employee well-being programs changed regarding focusing on nutrition and fitness? And we've kind of talked about it. It's looking at the whole person, and I love some of the stuff you've brought to the table. And you introduced me to that vendor, but talk to us about how you're kind of looking at the whole. What's changed in your mind?
Well, I think as employers, we just are getting smarter about our responsibility to the employee and to their family, to educate them about their own health, their family's health, to remove stresses, to provide services, to provide work-life balance for them where we can, to educate them where we can, to provide these well-being resources such as on-site flu clinics, on-site screenings, coaching, all of the aspects of a good wellness program. I think we know that it makes a difference. We know that employees are more engaged, they're more productive, they're happier, there's a higher level of engagement, and we have these people for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. So we have a big influence on them. We have a big influence on their overall well-being as well as their nutritional well-being. And it's our responsibility to deal with it. And I guess I do just think more employers are realizing that. And I have to just say, because I love talking about our founder, J.C. Hall, who founded the company in 1910, he really got this. He understood that equation. He made sure his employees were well-nourished. He started a food service in 1925. He started on-site medical clinics in 1928. A lot of it was because it was kind of rough around here, around this area. And he wanted to keep people in. He wanted to be able to provide services and, good meals and some good medical services for them right here and to keep them safe. But he also understood that was good business. that made for a productive and profitable company. So he cared about his employees greatly, but he also was a very smart businessman, a very visionary man. And so that's what I think. We try to carry that on, but I think a lot more employers are thinking that way these days. So, that I see that as a big trend.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, as you were talking about that, Sally, and what you talked about with your telephone counseling, that would be my biggest question for wellness directors out there. Because I see in my experience, a lot of the wellness directors are also running HR, and wellness is something that they're doing kind of on the side. And that really makes it a challenge. A lot of the times the wellness directors, because they're also HR, they don't have a nutrition background. They don't have a background in fitness or, mental health or any of these other topics. And so having conversations with people, you really want people that have the background to help their employees. And so I just want to make sure that, it's definitely worth the money. If you're going to spend like Jamie's program, she's got people on the ground. She's got a registered dietitian on staff. She's got a personal trainer on staff, and really putting the money into those resources will pay off in the long run. It doesn't work for everybody, but it is a great addition when you can make that happen.
Right. Yeah. We have a registered dietitian who's in charge of our food services, and that has been the case for many years. And I do think that's a big advantage because she can really oversee, all of the nutritional aspects and the menu development and making sure that we're really supporting our wellness goals. We have a whole team of people. It's no one's full-time job, but we have a team of about 6 of us who oversee the wellness program here. And, so everybody's doing their part of it on a part-time basis. But I think it works pretty well for us because we do have medical expertise, we have nutritional expertise, benefits expertise, and so we sort of glom it all together and it works. But I think you're right. I mean, many people are just running it as a very part-time, part of, or a very small part of their overall responsibilities.
Yeah. And then when they do the screening for their employees, or they have their employees do physicals, and then giving back those results. I mean, they just give the results and say, here are your results. They don't have anyone there with expertise that's credentialed to be able to sit down with them and tell them what it really means, and give them some steps to improve those numbers.
Yeah.
So.
Agreed.
Awesome. Well, that's definitely great information, guys. And I think, as we're focused on, the whole person, nutrition, fitness, and tools that we use to engage our folks, one of our panelists said it earlier, it's that culture equals engagement. And, I think, Sally, you said it best. You said, we had an owner who saw the need to make sure we take care of our employees. And that culture has stayed the test of time through, since you said 1929 or maybe before that. And so that's a hard thing to do, to make that kind of longevity last, that kind of care, that kind of culture. So that's really awesome. And I think employers can learn from that. It's that culture of investing in your employees, and they invest back in you, which is the ultimate goal of health and well-being program. So anyway, I do have another question. Let's see, Robin, what are the biggest challenges facing employees today regarding chronic disease and managing obesity alongside various fad diets? We've kind of answered some of this.
Well, when we think about chronic diseases, about 50% of American adults have one, and about 25% of them have 2 or more. So first of all, we have very high prevalence. Sometimes people haven't been diagnosed. So we've got a lot of folks with pre-hypertension, pre-diabetes, pre-cancer. So part of the issue is just the large number of people that are affected. About 75% of people with chronic conditions are non-compliant with the evidence-based care guidelines for their condition. So that causes them to experience acute symptoms that might result in absence from work or hospitalizations or other medical expenses. So we have those issues. But as I mentioned earlier, even though employees really value disease management programs, participation is very, very low. In many instances, I think they feel either that they don't need help or they're working with their doctor. But a vast majority of these preventable chronic conditions, we could either delay the onset or reduce the severity through better management of weight, diet, exercise, stress, sleep, you name it. So I think part of the challenge is it's just so complicated. So people have so much information, and if it's not their top priority, it doesn't make it to the top of their to-do list. So, it's for the same reason that employers are really struggling with this issue. How do you engage people in changing a behavior when it's not the most important thing for them? So I think one recommendation I would give to organizations is to ask your employees, what's one thing that you want help from your employer? And so if we could help people to address their most basic needs, then we can help connect them with coaches and resources. We could engage them in making healthier choices, and we could ultimately help them feel the way they want to feel, which will drive results.
Well, it's like what Sally's doing now, right? With using and allowing your employees to, kind of tell you what they want and call about what they need help with. I mean, it sounds like what you're doing is what Robin is suggesting, essentially, right?
Hopefully, yes.
It's not just coaching, it's recognizing that we have to personalize the experience. We need to make it accessible. We need to factor in digital health so that people can connect in ways that are relevant for them. Something like 50% of people will give up on a web page if it hasn't loaded in 3 seconds, right? Our attention span a few years ago was shorter than a goldfish at 8 seconds, and now it's down to 3. So how can we engage people when they need care and get them connected to resources immediately? So I think leveraging telehealth, other digital health apps and resources, on-site telephonic coaching, we really need to provide a whole menu of options so that we are at the ready when people are looking to make changes.
And I think the challenge with all that is trying to make it not just noise, make sure you want to provide options because everybody is looking for something different. You're not going to find a weight management program that will work for everybody that wants to lose weight. And we know that. So providing options for people is so important. But then when you're offering 10 different things, there's a lot of noise out there, and how does the right person find the right option for them? I would say that one of the things we try and do through our Healthy Lifestyles program, one of our goals is to identify risks before they lead to illness and disease. And we keep enforcing that with our employees. And one of the things that happened as a result of regular screenings, and Robin, you mentioned incentives, and I am an incentive proponent, and I know extrinsic versus intrinsic rewards. Intrinsic is obviously what you would want to have, but the reality is you're not going to get the majority of people to the table because it's the right thing to do. If we were, we wouldn't have 37% of our population that are obese right now. So, by getting them to the table, having them exposed to our regular yearly screening, we had a blood pressure. We had 21% of our employees with high blood pressure, measuring high blood pressure. We went through a couple of years of not screening, still had 21%. When we started regular screening, we now have 7% of our population measuring with high blood pressure values. And I think what happens is when you give them regular information, people understand what their risks are, and whether they change a behavior or work with a physician, the majority of people will address that risk. I think the easier we can make it, the better success we're going to have with people.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Susan, about one of the things, I'm sure all of you are probably doing this, and those who are watching a good idea to do as well is to survey your people. What are their biggest challenges? What are they struggling with? Now we're in this fast-paced work environment where oftentimes employees only get like 30 minutes for lunch. And so that makes it challenging, to get in and grab something healthy. And instead you just run to McDonald's or somewhere across the street. We're in this toxic food environment. Toxic foods everywhere, and then some of our employees have really, I know with Jamie at Napos, a lot of our employees have really long commutes. We're talking crazy, hour and a half one way, so how do you overcome those things? And so doing surveys and knowing your people, you can really make a big difference.
Yeah, and Susan, back to your point, Susan, of giving people regular information, we do track a cohort group that had completed our wellness screening 4 years in a row. We were using the same laboratory. Unfortunately, we used a different laboratory last year, so we don't have the 5th year. But about 3/4 of the people who were three-fourths of the people in the cohort group either improved or maintained their health over those 4 years.
Awesome.
So, it does show we have theories about the worried well, and that's who, we're getting to be screened every year. But at the same time, we're keeping those people from getting sick. And I think that is very key. Some people who are already sick, they're going to cost the system a lot of money no matter what. But keeping healthy people healthy is going to save more money in the long run.
Yeah, and I agree. Those incentives really make a big deal as well. When I look at Jamie's program at Napos, they do a really good job with their incentives for incentivizing these employees for each of these health parameters. And if they can get it within a certain limit, then they get X number of dollars. And sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah, actions speak louder than words, because so often we see surveys that tell us what employees want, but based on their behavior, even though money came up as number 3 most important in considering where to work and why to stay, based on behavior, it is actually the number 1 most important. And so we can think about ways to put money back in people's pockets while also driving the desired business results. The challenge is when you ask someone to fill out a self-reported health assessment, right, or they're not learning anything new and then you pay them, or they're not engaging in behavior change and they're getting paid for it. I love the approach where you can create sustainable engagement throughout the year, where you're aligning the rewards the employees are receiving with the feelings that they're starting to experience, and then with the better business results for organizations with increased productivity and performance, reduced absence, and ultimately higher profitability. So I think a well-designed incentive program can be masterful, but it can also be a disaster if it's not designed correctly.
Wow. Well, everybody here today has brought to the table such awesome commentary, and we're just so thankful for Sally and Hallmark and Susan and WellBeing and JJ and being in doctorate in nutrition, and of course Robin and director of WellBeing at a large consulting firm, Aon. You guys are just wonderful to take the time out of your day to bring this kind of news and information, and these conversations spark ideas spark change, and that's the goal. Really, can we help these employers? And so our members, who are Corporate Health and Wellness Association members, are asking for conversations like this. And so for you guys to take the time, just so everyone knows what it takes to get something like this pulled together, there's scripts, there's questions, there's commentary, there's planning, and all of these people who have real jobs and full-time jobs with part-time responsibilities on top of the full-time have taken the time to come together, help me develop drafts of proper questions to help us really get to a great point. And so for that, I am so grateful. Robin, JJ, I know all of you have, Susan and Sally, you all have a lot on your plates. And so we all really do thank you so much for bringing your knowledge to the table. And I think we had told everybody we'd end by 4:20, and I'm 5 minutes over. And I'm sorry about that for you guys, because I know you have next meetings to get to. But want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll be doing a mental health summit in June. I've got some really cool stuff. We're going to talk about pharmacogenomics and how to make sure you're actually on the right medication. I'm a mom who has a child that had to be on meds, and I'll tell you, it was the worst to have her on test monkey medication that didn't work for her and caused all kinds of horrible things. And so the way medicine is going, food is going, health is going, there's a lot of precision things that can be done to help everybody, just become better. And so that's what we'll be covering, not just that, but a lot of other things in our mental health and behavioral summit. So I hope everybody will join us in June. And thank you guys all for your time. And I hope to talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.